This is the last part of 3 videos in a complete series that you have never seen before. The story of the Magi does not end with the moment of adoration. After offering their gifts and bowing before the Christ child, they receive a divine warning not to return to Herod. And then comes a subtle but profound statement in Matthew 2 verse 12. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they return to their country by another route. This verse carries layers of meaning: geographic, prophetic, and symbolic. The return journey of the Magi marks a turning point not only in the narrative, but also in their personal transformation. In this chapter, we will explore the significance of this new path, and how encountering Christ changes not only what we see, but how we live. On the surface, the text simply notes that the Magi took a different road to avoid Herod. But in biblical literature, a path or way often symbolizes more than just geography. It reflects one's life direction, spiritual journey, or even moral choice. To return by another route is to leave the encounter with Jesus changed, no longer able to walk the same way as before. This subtle narrative choice is a powerful metaphor for the spiritual life. No one who truly encounters Christ returns home the same. The dream that warns the Magi not to return to Herod is part of a series of divine interventions in Matthew's Gospel. Joseph is warned in a dream to flee to Egypt, Matthew 2 verse 13. Later, he is told when it's safe to return, Matthew 2 verse 19. The Magi, too, receive a message from God in the night. These dreams underscore a central theme. God speaks to those who are listening, even through unexpected channels. The Magi, though Gentiles and outsiders, are portrayed as spiritually sensitive, able to discern and obey God's voice. Their willingness to alter their path reflects a posture of humility and obedience. Much of the Magi's story is about movement. They follow a star across foreign lands. They enter Jerusalem seeking answers. They arrive in Bethlehem and kneel. And finally, they go home by a new path. This outer movement reflects an inner transformation. Their journey is not only from east to west, but from curiosity to conviction, from searching to worship, from knowledge to wisdom. The gifts they offer are not the climax of the story. The transformation they undergo is. They have seen the King. They have recognized the divine in vulnerability. And that vision has redirected their lives. The Magi's journey is often seen as the first Christian pilgrimage, a model for all spiritual seekers. In many traditions, pilgrimage involves departure, leaving behind what is known; journey, facing challenges, relying on faith; encounter, a sacred moment of revelation; return, coming home with a new perspective. But the return is never just a reversal. It's the completion of the journey, and it carries the seeds of transformation into everyday life. The Magi did not build a shrine or stay in Bethlehem. They returned to their country, likely to their own cities, duties, and communities. But they returned differently. Their return reminds us that true worship doesn't remove us from the world. It equips us to re-enter it with renewed vision. To take another way is also a symbol of conversion. The world has many paths of ambition, pride, control, and self-interest. Herod represents the path of fear and violence. But the Magi choose a different way, one informed by light, humility, and obedience. Their choice models the decision every disciple must make. Having seen the Christ, how will we walk from now on? The encounter with Jesus disrupts old maps. It reveals a new horizon. And it asks us not only to believe, but to walk accordingly. We often imagine the Magi fading into history after their visit. But what if their story didn't end there? Imagine them returning to their homeland, sharing what they had seen, reflecting the light of the one they had met, living differently in their own context. Their transformation may have influenced others. Perhaps the seeds of faith were sown in distant lands because of their testimony. We do not know for sure, but the narrative invites us to consider that encounters with Christ have ripple effects far beyond the moment. Their journey back becomes a mission, quiet, personal, but powerful. The return journey of the Magi is one of the most poetic and profound moments in the Nativity story. They came searching. They found something greater than they imagined. And they went home, by another way. This is the journey of every spiritual seeker. To encounter Christ is to see the world anew. To follow him is to walk differently, guided not by fear or ambition, but by faith and wonder. The star may fade from the sky, but the light remains in the heart. And that light leads us home. Though centuries separate us from the story of the Magi, their journey continues to resonate deeply in the realm of contemporary spirituality. Beyond the nativity scene and Christmas carols, their symbolism endures as a call to seek truth, embrace mystery, and honor the sacred in a fragmented world. In this final chapter, we reflect on how the story of the Magi continues to offer insight for those who, like them, walk a path of faith, wonder, and transformation in our modern age. The star that led the Magi has become a universal image of divine guidance. In a world where many feel spiritually disoriented, the idea of following a light, a purpose, a calling, a sacred intuition, is more relevant than ever. In contemporary spirituality, this star may take many forms. A question that won't go away. A sense of longing for something more. A sudden moment of clarity. A journey through doubt that opens into faith. The Magi remind us that spiritual awakening often begins with a sign. Not always grand or dramatic, but unmistakably personal. They encourage us to trust the mystery of guidance, to follow even when the destination is unclear. The Magi were outsiders, foreigners, people from another religion and culture. Yet they were the first to recognize and worship the Christ child. This makes their story incredibly powerful in a world marked by religious pluralism, global diversity, and interfaith dialogue. Contemporary spirituality, especially among younger generations, often resists rigid boundaries. Many are seeking truth across traditions, blending Christian faith with contemplative practices, social justice, environmental care, and inner healing. The Magi offer a model of openness, one that honors deep spiritual conviction while also embracing a posture of humility and seeking. Their journey affirms that God is not limited by borders, and that divine light can shine in unexpected places, even in the hearts of those outside traditional belief systems. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh were tangible offerings. But symbolically, they represent gifts of the soul, things we still bring when we truly encounter the sacred. Gold can represent our resources, our talents, our capacity to serve. Frankincense may symbolize our worship, our prayers, our desire for connection. Myrrh reflects our willingness to embrace vulnerability, suffering, and sacrifice. In today's world, where spirituality is often seen as private or internal, the Magi challenge us to externalize our devotion, to offer something real, valuable, and meaningful in response to divine presence. Whether through acts of kindness, creative expression, or compassionate service, we are called to bring our own gifts to the altar of life. One of the most striking aspects of the Magi's story is that it is a journey. They do not encounter the sacred by staying in place. They move. They risk. They search. This has inspired countless modern reflections on the spiritual path as a pilgrimage, not only literal, but symbolic. Today, many people are rediscovering the power of retreats, stepping back to reflect, pilgrimages, walking ancient paths like the Camino de Santiago, personal sabbaticals, creating space for silence, healing, or realignment. The Magi remind us that truth often requires travel, not only physical, but emotional and spiritual. It means stepping out of comfort zones, facing uncertainty, and letting ourselves be transformed along the way. In a culture saturated with information, the Magi point us toward contemplation, the kind of deep listening that opens space for divine presence. Their journey is not marked by argument or dogma, but by watchfulness, intuition, and revelation. Contemporary spiritual seekers are increasingly drawn to practices like silence and meditation, lectio divina and sacred reading, journaling and reflective prayer, art and music as forms of devotion. These practices echo the stillness of that night in Bethlehem, the silence where God speaks not through thunder, but through the cry of a newborn and the quiet awe of those who bow in worship. Ultimately, the story of the Magi is not just a tale from the past. It is an invitation for the present. To seek light in the midst of darkness. To cross boundaries in pursuit of truth. To offer our best, even when it costs us. To allow encounters with the sacred to change our direction. In an age of division, distraction, and despair, their journey offers hope. It tells us that the sacred is not far from those who truly seek, and that wisdom is often found in the hearts of those willing to kneel before mystery. As we reach the end of this exploration, we find ourselves returning, like the Magi, by another route. Not just with more information, but with deeper insight. The story of the Magi is one of openness, courage, and faith. It challenges us to look up, to follow the signs, to endure the journey, and to give generously of who we are. But most of all, it reminds us that in a world longing for meaning, the light still shines. And for those willing to search, the journey has only just begun. The story of the Magi is deeply rooted in the Christian narrative, but its themes, celestial signs, sacred journeys, wise figures from the East, echo across various religious and philosophical traditions. By examining these parallels, we can broaden our understanding of the Magi not just as historical characters, but as archetypal symbols of spiritual seeking. In this chapter, we'll explore how similar figures and motifs appear in Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Buddhism, and ancient mythology, and how this enriches the symbolic power of the biblical Magi. Archetype of the sage. In many traditions, the East represents more than a direction. It symbolizes illumination, origin, and spiritual insight. The Magi are described as from the East, and this locational detail carries archetypal weight. In the ancient world, the East was associated with mystery, astrology, sacred knowledge, and prophetic traditions. This mirrors how Eastern sages are revered in other systems. In Chinese tradition, wise men like Laozi brought cosmic balance and harmony. In Hinduism, the East is linked to the dawn of knowledge and the rise of spiritual awakening. In Buddhism, seekers travel from east to west in search of enlightenment, mirroring the Magi's westward journey to the Christ child. The Magi can thus be seen as part of a broader spiritual pattern, seekers of truth who leave their homeland to find deeper light. Perhaps the strongest historical connection to the Magi is found in Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion from which the word magus likely originates. In Zoroastrian culture, Magi were a class of priest-scholars who interpreted dreams, watched the stars, and served as advisors to kings. They believed in a cosmic struggle between light and darkness, truth and deceit, themes echoed in the Gospel of Matthew. Fire and light played a central role in Zoroastrian worship, aligning symbolically with the star that leads the Magi. While we cannot say definitively that Matthew's Magi were Zoroastrian, the parallels are striking. Both traditions emphasize cosmic order, divine revelation through celestial signs, and a coming savior, Saoshyant in Zoroastrianism, the Messiah in Christianity. The Magi, then, may represent not only individuals but the yearning of an entire tradition reaching toward the fulfillment of its deepest hopes. In Islam, the story of the Nativity appears differently. While the Quran speaks of Maryam, Mary, and the miraculous birth of Isa, Jesus, it does not mention the Magi. However, Islamic mysticism, especially in Sufi traditions, often celebrates the idea of divine signs, traveling seekers, and hidden knowledge revealed through love and devotion. Many Sufi poets, including Rumi, write of stars guiding the heart, the soul's journey toward the divine, and the transformative power of encountering the beloved. In this light, the Magi resonate with Sufi ideals. Those who travel from afar, those who read the signs of heaven, those who bow not to power, but to love. In Judaism, the figure of the Magi is foreign, but not entirely disconnected. The Hebrew Bible contains examples of Gentile figures who recognize the power and presence of the God of Israel. Balaam, a non-Israelite prophet, is hired to curse Israel but ends up blessing them, guided by divine visions. Numbers 22-24. Melchizedek, a priest-king of Salem, blesses Abraham and is recognized as a true servant of God. Genesis 14. Both characters are, like the Magi, outsiders who nevertheless discern spiritual truth and act in harmony with God's will. However, the New Testament depiction of the Magi also introduces tension, particularly with figures like Herod, the Jewish king who resists the Messiah. This contrast highlights the biblical theme that sometimes outsiders perceive divine truth more clearly than insiders. The journey of the Magi also finds echoes in ancient mythologies. In Greek tradition, the seers and oracles often interpret signs from the heavens to guide rulers. In Egyptian mythology, The stars were believed to convey the will of the gods. In Roman imperial ideology, comets and celestial signs were interpreted as omens of new emperors being born. In each case, celestial events signal the arrival of a transformative figure, just as the star leads the Magi to the Christ child. These parallels reveal a universal intuition that the cosmos is not silent, but speaks, especially at the birth of someone who will change the world. In the end, the Magi stand as a bridge between faith traditions. Though rooted in Christian scripture, they evoke themes shared across religious and philosophical systems. A longing for the transcendent, a willingness to leave what is known, the interpretation of signs, the reverence for divine mystery. They do not come with dogma, but with wonder, not to preach, but to kneel. And in doing so, they embody a spiritual posture that transcends culture and creed. By examining the Magi through a comparative lens, we see how their journey resonates beyond Christianity, reflecting a universal pattern of wisdom, pilgrimage, and transformation. They remind us that the search for divine light is not confined to one faith, and that God, in infinite grace, may call seekers from every corner of the earth. In the Magi, we glimpse the beauty of interreligious harmony, the courage of stepping into the unknown, and the hope that all true seeking leads, in the end, to a manger, to the light, and to love incarnate. The journey of the Magi, though brief in Scripture, opens vast horizons of reflection, theology, and spiritual inspiration. Their story, like a star crossing the sky, leaves a lasting trail that guides hearts across centuries and cultures. As we conclude this exploration, we return to the central question: who were the Magi? And perhaps the most powerful answer is this: they were seekers of light. Their identity is not confined to nationality, titles, or religion. What defines them is their longing for truth, their courage to leave what was familiar, and their reverent surrender before divine mystery. Let us now draw together the threads of their legacy and what it means for us today. The Magi saw a star and chose to follow it. In a world where many gaze at the same sky but never move, their decision to act sets them apart. Their journey reminds us that divine revelation is not limited by geography, ethnicity, or tradition. The light shines for all who have the eyes to see and the courage to respond. Matthew's Gospel, written primarily for a Jewish audience, opens with a striking paradox. The first to recognize the Messiah are Gentile foreigners. This sets the tone for the entire New Testament. That Christ is not the possession of one people, but the gift to all nations. That God's light is not hidden in temples or palaces, but revealed in humility, to those who seek with open hearts. The story of the Magi echoes the prophetic vision of Isaiah. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Isaiah 60 verse 3. This vision, of the nations streaming toward divine light, is fulfilled symbolically in the Magi. They are representatives of the world, bending the knee to the child who is light incarnate. Their presence is a declaration. The Messiah has come not for one tribe, but for humanity. Not for the powerful, but for the humble. Not for insiders only, but for every heart that seeks. The Magi do not only bring gifts, they leave transformed. Their journey illustrates a key spiritual truth. True worship always leads to transformation. They do not return to Herod. They do not resume their old paths. They go home by another way, not only in geography, but in soul. This is the invitation extended to each of us. To encounter Christ is to receive light. To follow him is to be changed. To be changed is to become bearers of light ourselves. The Magi follow the star, but after encountering Jesus, they become like stars themselves, silent bearers of light, illuminating the world they return to. In Christian spirituality, the idea of becoming light recurs often. You are the light of the world. Matthew 5 verse 14. The Magi remind us that faith is not a possession, but a mission. Having found the King, they carry his radiance with them, to lands and peoples who may never have seen Bethlehem. In our time, surrounded by darkness, confusion, and fear, we too are called to reflect this light. Through kindness, through justice, through beauty, through humility, through truth spoken with love. The Magi offer encouragement to every spiritual seeker, especially those who feel distant, confused, or on the margins. They were not religious insiders. They had no access to the scriptures. They made mistakes, stopped at the wrong palace, asked questions, and followed a sign they barely understood. And still, they found Christ. Their story tells us that God honors the sincere seeker, that the journey matters, that those who knock will find the door opened. If the Magi found their way to Jesus, so can we. So can anyone. In Christian theology, the Magi's gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, are often seen as foreshadowing the cross. Gold for royalty, acknowledging Jesus as king. Frankincense for divinity, offered in worship. Myrrh for burial, pointing to his sacrificial death. Thus, the visit of the Magi is not just about birth. It quietly prepares us for the whole gospel. From the cradle to the cross, from the star to the empty tomb, the light continues to shine, and the Magi are the first to witness it. The Magi teach us that the universe speaks, the soul longs, the path may be difficult, but the one we seek is worth the journey. Their story is an invitation to awaken, to lift our eyes, to move, to bow, to give, and finally to go, carrying the light that has changed us. The Magi return home, but they are never the same, and neither are we. When we truly encounter the one who is the light of the world,